expensive to be in the business, and the revenues were a bit meager because the sales volumes were low as well.
So the last 10 years is essentially the development of a new medium. This is the thing that's happened, is it?
Right, so a couple of things have happened. With the iPhone, the device itself is very, very powerful and a good portable entertainment device. But I think the biggest change with the iPhone was the change of the business model. So now suddenly it's possible for any developer to submit their game onto the store and have an immediate global distribution of their game. And the rankings of the games are decided by their popularity. And so it's a totally different model from what it used to be.
The irritatingly catchy theme tune of Angry Birds, a runaway success due mostly to the Apple iPhone and the App Store. Until Angry Birds was sold on the application store in 2010, Rovio was a games company without, apparently, much of a future. And then things changed fast.
Angry Birds came about as a mix of us really questioning everything we knew about making games and what a good game feels and looks like. And we had done already more than 50 games before we did Angry Birds. So we had that science part of it. But really the art of making games came when we saw these bird characters designed by our game designer, Jaakko Iisalo.
You were kind of building on the potential that was innate in the drawing he'd made, or they were amusing and engaging even on the page, even on the screen, were they?
Just seeing one image of those birds was enough to make us feel like, okay, well, we want to know more about these birds. We want to know what they're like and why they're angry, and that really was a great inspirational moment for all of us.
This was the starting point, these birds with potential, and that's the reason that this is so sticky, because most applications sold on the App Store or given away have a half-life of about 3 weeks or something, don't they?
We recognized this when we released Angry Birds, and we were doing our best to create the conditions that would allow it to stay on top of the charts for longer than the average game. And also we wanted to find ways to keep the brand fresh and new for as long as possible. And really the ambition from very early on was to create an evergreen brand.
It's eye-grabbing and experience-grabbing to start off with, but keeping it going. Do you keep adding features all the time so there's always something new to come back to?
More than adding features is about what features do you leave out. In Angry Birds we've succeeded quite well in keeping it very, very simple. There are a million things we could have done with it. We worked very hard to keep the game super approachable. We do add content. We have seasonal content. We did a space version where we collaborated with NASA. Also, it is very important that we do have the animations, comics, and the merchandise to support the brand.
Angry Birds sells for 99 US cents. That's if you buy it. There's also a free version that the company gives away. This is the economics of the Internet.
You can find both paid versions of the game and advertising-funded versions of the game, even free versions that are the kind of trial versions of the game.
1 billion downloads means you're an example of a software company that, starting from quite a simple and straightforward base, has a global audience from almost day one.
It's true, and that's really what's changing the whole media industry. It's remarkable how far you can go with so little to start with. In our case, we have created one of the most popular entertainment brands in the world, starting with 12 people and almost no capital at all. Last year we had revenues of some $106 million. We have some 400 employees now. If you look at the statistics, I would say that Angry Birds has far surpassed our expectations that we had early in 2009.
5 years' time, Angry Birds will presumably be just one part of the portfolio. We don't know, do we? We don't know how this platform is going to develop. Gaming could go off in a completely new direction.
Yes. And that's also why we're not only in gaming. We have built an entertainment company that does many other things besides gaming, and We believe that there's no reason why Angry Birds wouldn't be very popular for decades.
Mikael Head of the Finnish company Rovio. Now let's go to another significant games-producing country, Britain, where the developers Six to Start adopted a name harking back to the number that board game players have to roll on the dice before they're able to begin the game. Like Rovio in Finland, this is also something of a family business. Two brothers initially making games based on popular TV programmes for television companies to sell under their own label. Now, Six to Start is branching out into its own titles. I heard from the founder, Adrian Hon, along with one of the company's games writers, Naomi Alderman. Adrian Hon speaks first.
We were founded about 5 years ago, between myself and my brother. Before that, I worked at a company called Mind Candy, which many people will know for making a game called Moshi Monsters, a kids' game.
We're now seeing a migration to different machines and a migration of the ideas and the concepts and how you play it and what it's about.
Games are obviously becoming much more social now. But I think one of the biggest changes is simply that hundreds of millions of people now have devices in their pockets all the time with which they can play quite sophisticated games. And previously, a lot of people may or may not have wanted to play games, but they didn't have the technology to do so.
And you've got a lot of computer power, Naomi, haven't you?
Well, we certainly do. I mean, if you're talking about games that you remember playing in the early 90s, you're carrying around so much more processing power than that.
Well, it was basically a sort of noughts and crosses or somebody jumping over barriers and smashing into a wall or something. And it was black and white too, wasn't it?
The kind of thing that was cutting edge 15 years ago, you can play right now on whatever smartphone you have.
This was just part of a much longer conversation, so next week on the programme, Adrian Hon and Naomi Alderman will be back to talk about how they created a game that combines zombies and physical exercise. Yes, physical exercise, about the current state of the games and publishing industries, and quite a lot more. This is Global Business from the BBC. I'm Peter Day, this week trying to get to grips with something I don't understand at all, computer games, a huge industry. And if, like me, you're missing the games gene, you might think computer games are all about shooting or smashing bricks, activities the early games seemed to concentrate on years ago. Those are things that don't hold much interest for Paolo Pedaccini. Originally from Italy, he's now a lecturer at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh in the USA. He's also the founder of the games developer Mole Industria, using his games designing skills in a politically aware way.
When I started in 2003, 2004 in Italy, I was into politics and media activism. At that point, video games were the only cultural field missing any alternative voices. In other fields, you have underground comics, you have socially engaged films, sure, but games only reflected basically the dominant values.
Then you started building games that were what?
They are basically games dealing with social issues, ranging from labor issues to religion to economics and environment. One of the strategies that I use is I generally tend to put the player in unusual roles and situations. So the players get to play very awkward or problematic roles.
The opening scene of the game Unmanned, in which the hero or anti-hero wakes up from a nightmare to go to his job on an American base, piloting a drone above the skies of Afghanistan. This isn't, however, a shoot-'em-up game. The character is put through such mundane tasks as shaving, singing along to the radio, and chatting to a co-worker. Seemingly boring, but also strangely compelling. Unmanned won a prize sponsored by the Knight Foundation for Journalism at the recent Games for Change Awards. The judges said the game subtly confronts players with 21st century warfare.
I think games are particularly good at portraying complex systems. Games themselves are systems of rules. Two of my most popular games actually put you in the shoes of a CEO of corporations. Your goal is to maximize profits, obviously, but in order to do so, you might choose some unethical practices, and you're confronted with all the negative externalities of your industrial process.
You started a mobile phone game. What's it called?
It's called Phone Story, which is basically an anti-smartphone game for smartphones. I just realized that even in my own field, the field of digital games, which is supposedly material, we are dealing with information, we are dealing with zero and ones, but it actually has a very material side because it relies on cheap hardware, basically. The game basically starts to tell you the story of the very device that you are holding. Where does it come from? So in the first level, you have this kind of like scene set in Congo where there's minerals, coltan, that is present in all the electronic devices. That's where most of the coltan is mined from, and you have prisoners of war that are enslaved, often children, and they are mining this material that gets into our phone. In the second level, you have a representation of the issue with Foxconn, the big assembly factory in China, where there was a wave of suicides, and so you're trying to prevent frustrated, burnt-out workers to jump out of the window. And then in the final scene, you have to deal with the end of the cycle, so you have to deal with electronic waste.
Hello, consumer. Thank you for joining us. Let me tell you the story of this phone while I provide you with quality entertainment.
You produce this game and then you want to make it available to sell it, so you get it in the App Store.
Yeah, we put it in the Apple Store, and strangely, it passed because it was functional. There was nothing so outrageous. But a few hours after it was approved, they basically realized that it was kind of a media stunt, and they pulled it from the market.
What do you make of that?
Well, banning resulted in a kind of like a widespread kind of controversy and a scandal. Like a lot of people started to discuss. People are like looking for more information, like what was this game that was so outrageous to be banned. I'd rather have it available in the Apple Store, but in a way, it kind of expanded the discourse. It's not just about the production process, but also about what runs into these devices. And so it became more about kind of like market censorship, or what you can run and can you not run on your device.
So it's still available, the game, isn't it? I can still buy it.
It's available on Android. They have a loser policy, so like for Android devices is still available and actually quite successful. It's available online, but yeah, it's not available for Apple devices.
The issue of editorial control going on here, a big corporation with an app store which is become quite an important dynamic in the formation of little new businesses, hasn't it? Also uses its power to say yes and no to the things that are on sale there.
The main problem to me is that Apple, in their own guidelines, are basically dismissing the concept of app as a cultural product. So they're basically saying, this is not like music, this is not like books. Apps are meant to be more like screwdrivers. And it's kind of problematic when you get into games. Games can be much more than screwdrivers.
Paul Pedicini, developer of Phone Story and other politically charged games. And we asked Apple about Phone Story, but the company didn't want to comment. Now, the almost instant success of some computer games can make them a roller coaster ride of a business. Zynga, based in San Francisco, is a good example. Last year, Zynga, devising games mostly running on the huge social network website Facebook, was valued at $1 billion after it sold some of its stock in an initial public offering. But now Zynga's share price has tumbled to less than half its flotation value, and it fell sharply again only the other day when the company warned about falling profits. Shares in Facebook have also been under pressure as investors worry about the sustainability of these virally popular social business models. Zynga's Vice President of Product is Sean Kelly.
We've certainly had a great deal of success on Facebook, and the idea of having games within Facebook that you could use as another way of connecting to people that you were adding to your list of friends was really a fantastic way of proving out our philosophy that play is really a form of connection between people. It doesn't have to be a solo